Your blood comes from dukes and great houses. We don't have that here. We're equal. Men and women alike. What we do for the benefit of all.
I'd very much like to be equal to you.
Good morning, Vietnam!
Greetings and salutations.
Oh, hi, Mark.
All right, I run out of patience.
Showtime.
Hello and welcome back to In Retrospect. My name is Matt, and as always, I am joined by Brady. Brady, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good, man. How about you?
Dude, I am elated. I love this movie. Today we're talking about Dune Part Two. I have waited for 3 years. Is it 3 years? I think so. It's whatever. 2 years, 2.5 years, something like that. And they hit it out of the park, I think. I'm curious though to talk with you since I read the book. I know that there were some changes in here, and I'm anxious to hear what you thought of those changes. I got some problems with one of them. It's kind of crazy. Don't know what he's going to do, but without freaking further ado, we have waited so long with the writer's strike and everything else going on. Let's talk about Dune Part 2, man. Are you excited?
Mm-hmm. Oh, dude, that reminds me whenever this was about to come out and you were like, there's no way they delay it.
We don't have to talk about this.
And I was like, dude, it's going to happen.
Well, in my defense, and I was very wrong, but in my defense, like, one, I was not thinking of Hot Ones at the time. That's a very pivotal thing going on. And then number two, I don't know that anyone suspected that, aside from maybe the writers or the actors, suspected this thing was going to last as long as it did.
Very true.
So I will use that as my excuse. But anyway, how do you want to kick this thing off? Do you want to go some thoughts first and then get into some more specific things? What do you want to do?
Yeah, let's just do that.
All right, I'll let you go first.
All right, so I think that this is a very well made movie. Mm-hmm. Direction, all the texts, pretty much all the performances, everything are very good. I really like it. I hesitate to say I love it just because I have conflicting thoughts over a lot of things, but those thoughts, of course, stem from differences from the book, but I feel like I'm in the same boat I was in after the first one, where I'm just like, I'm just going to kind of wait and see what he does next. Like, I feel like I can trust Denny. I feel like
I wanted to ask you that. Like, I knew that was something that was going to come up. Like, if you had to like put an expectation on what Dune Messiah, because I know it gets like very strange and maybe a little bit too into the character of what you've told me before. I'll just be very forward. You told me before that like he felt like Frank had to course correct based on the response of like some of the people, the way they looked at Paul after the end of the original Dune book. Do you feel like Denny, there's no way, one, I think Denny's not aware of that. Do you, and I obviously I'm not privy to maybe some of the weirder things that might be in this book, aside from one, which we'll get to later on. What's your expectations with what he's going to do with 3? Do you think like it's like you get what I'm saying? Is that a good question?
Yeah. I kind of don't know. He leaves a lot of things up in the air. Like, my first sort of reaction to the movie was that I feel like he's kind of thrown everything away and it's going to kind of be his own thing. But like, the more I think about it, there's still like a road open for the majority of things that happen in Dune Messiah to happen. Yeah, exactly. The golden path, as Frank Herbert called it. I think everything's still on the table pretty much. I think he made some choices in this movie to really, because we're not hearing these characters' internal monologues like you are in a book, you had to do certain things with certain characters to really present things in a way where the audience could like really understand what's going on with the character of Paul throughout this. Now I'm not completely okay with all that, but
Sure.
I feel like Dune must. It's interesting because this movie is like action packed. Of course, like this is the action movie of this trilogy. Like if the third movie's anything like the book, it's going to be a lot of people sitting in rooms talking about what happened in the events of Dune and basically just like recontextualizing a lot of things, which I'm down for. I don't know if everybody else is going to be down for that, but
You know,
I'm very interested to see what he does for sure.
there is no secret. I've seen this movie 3 times. Dude, it just grows on me, man. I love this thing the first night I saw it. I loved it even more the second time I saw it. And guess what? I love it even more since the third time I saw it. Like I find it extremely compelling. It's what. So I like on my when I'm getting a lot of flack on YouTube. First of all, like specifically from like book purists, and I say that like not targeting like book purists, but like super book purists. Like we're talking like fundamentalists, crazy. Like so I made some very like half-hearted, lazy comparisons to Star Wars, and the way I framed it basically was like, I initially when I was watching, I'm like, this seems like Star Wars, and then I looked it up and found out, that's not the case. Like Star Wars was very like very much inspired by this. Dude, like the part of the reason that I connect with this so well, it's just not a negative connotation thing. It's because all of these things are so similar to me. And then also because if you look at 1999, I think like 2002 or 2003, and then 2005, George Lucas tried to make this.
He did. Yes. Uh-huh.
And it didn't work. Well, not to the extent that this is. And
third of it worked really well, but that's about it.
and I could see what George Lucas was trying to do. This movie just does it about 15 times better, like by a lot. And I find the another thing I thought about too while watching it the second time after again knowing that Game of Thrones probably very much heavily inspired, especially like Daenerys.
Yeah.
So incredibly inspired by Paul Atreides, I think. The political intrigue of it all, like, I almost wonder, does this movie get made if that Game of Thrones series does not exist? Because it's also the same studio, right? Like, that's a whole other, like, lane of this that we haven't even considered, but... No, I love this thing. I love the mythology of it. I love the world building of it. I love the characters in it. Just everything about it is it's just, I have a couple of issues, but I get over those issues because of everything else. And if that's not the most Star Wars thing I've ever heard in my life, I don't know what is.
Yeah, it's cool. Like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I trust him, but there's also just things that I know aren't going to happen that I love from the books. Things even in the first movie, like my favorite scene in the entire book, he cut out. Like it would have happened in the first movie, and it's okay.
What's the favorite scene?
Like, there's this whole dinner scene where that they have on Arrakis, where like all the houses like come and attend this banquet there, and you like see sort of the interactions between them and like all the big players in the universe that we still haven't even met in these movies. I don't know if we ever will. It's really interesting, like how narrow in scope he's kind of kept this. But I don't know. There's just a lot of moments in that dinner that are very interesting, give you a lot of insight into the characters. But it's fine. I mean, he made it past that. I mean, it's not like they it takes anything away from the movies or anything. But I feel like I'm always going to be kind of upset about some of that and about some of the changes and everything. But it all comes down to like this is like a book I really like, and to see so many people just gushing over these movies and like getting into Dune it's cool. Like it's worth it, even with those things that I have issues with. It's just really cool to see people getting into this world.
I went to buy Dune Messiah the other day. Mm-hmm. It's sold out, like everywhere, like locally. It has to be shipped to me.
That's awesome.
Today is the Monday after release, and I've been trying to buy it since last week. Mm-hmm. So I can tell you from my experience, I'm going to probably just end up buying like the 3-book collection because I want to read it. And kind of in the same way of Star Wars, I'm going to keep making this comp. Like the world just seems so incredibly expansive. And
yeah,
I though I love what we're seeing on screen, I'm so very interested in everything else that's going on in the peripherals. But I say all that to say this. I'm not the only one, very obviously, who is very intrigued about this world because the box office, and then 2, like obviously the books. Mm-hmm. Anywho, I'll go ahead.
I also just want to say that like there's been I've seen a lot of people talk about how, like, I'm a big Tolkien fan. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of Lord of the Rings. And like whenever those movies came out, people were having the same issues I'm having right now, where like they're so tied to those books that any little changes they were just getting upset over. But that was probably through 2 movies, and then once that 3rd movie came out, they realized like they saw Peter Jackson's full vision of everything and how it all worked out, and like everything ended up working perfectly well. And those movies are highly regarded by fans of the books and just your general audience. I really think that's what we got on our hands right here. So I'm just doing my best to wait it out.
Yeah. I think we'll get more into this a little bit later on, but ultimately, I think, if anything, Blade Runner 2049 proves that you can just trust him to explore a world that already exists. And then 2, like I said this last time, he has not made a bad movie. I really struggle to believe, especially how hell-bent he is on making this movie. I struggle to believe, like, he's like you, right? Like, I'm sure you've listened to different interviews and heard him speak on it, but like, he's dreamed of making this movie.
Yeah.
And so like, he used
to storyboard it when he was a kid. That's crazy, man.
Yeah. I just can't imagine. Shout out his friend though. Unfortunate for that guy. I just can't imagine he's gonna mess it up. Again, obviously it's going to be very different than the book. I feel like, just from the way he set things up, but even the things that he set up that is different from the book, I think have worked for me for sure. And I think for other people specifically who have not read the book, and it's made them want to read the book. Yeah.
I think people are going to be a little upset because they're like, I haven't gone past the 2nd book. Well, I tried to, and then it just got a little weird. This is one of those odd series where like everybody's like, which books do you read? And it's like, you just read it until you start not liking it, because it's not going to bring you back in. Like, there's like, each book like is pretty much has its own cutoff point. Like, you could just be like, okay, that's the end. Like, that's kind of how I'm treating Dune Messiah. Like, it's just a great little epilogue to the 1st book. And I think a lot of fans are getting upset because things that he hasn't set up, basically, there's no way they could do like a Children of Dune or something like that. But the thing is like, he's not really interested in that. Like, he's done after Messiah.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm interested to see if the studio steps in a bit and is like, we gotta leave some of these windows open in the next one, or like if they're just gonna let him do his thing.
I think once this HBO Bene Gesserit show comes out, if that has the same mass appeal, well, even like a fraction of the mass appeal that like House of the Dragon had, I think you're going to get a lot of things announced. Probably that would be my guess. because I do think, like, not obviously, I don't believe you're going to explore any of the Paul Atreides like like era of the world, just because it would negate a lot of the things that have happened. I do think though, maybe you get like, maybe you even get like the early story of Lady Jessica as a baby, like growing up. Like, I think that could be interesting. Things like that, like just out of the peripheral, just so you can't just like, it's not like, it's not that Star Wars, I don't think they're going to make the mistake that Star Wars made, where like everything is within 20 years of each other, because if they do that, I think you can box yourself up really quickly. But I could definitely see them exploring some, maybe we haven't gotten to it yet. And again, one of the pretty massive like question marks is Alia, but maybe that could be something that they might potentially be setting up. Anyhow, speaking of characters, you ready to hop in this thing?
Yeah.
You want to go first?
Oh, we start with Paul?
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, I like him. I like him when he's Paul. And then I'm not sure how I feel about if I buy the turn yet.
Sure. I personally do. I think the thing of again, I think to talk about Paul specifically, you break him into three parts. He's Paul first, and then he's Muad'Dib, and then he's Lisan al-Gaib. I think maybe where some of that, obviously I think some of yours is like connected to the book, but also I think just as a viewer of the movie, I think some of it, I don't know if it's, I don't want to make my implication that it's not completely sold, because for me it is, but I do know the Muad'Dib part of it all is rushed a lot. Like there doesn't feel a disconnection between Paul Atreides and Muad'Dib, and there doesn't feel a disconnection between Muad'Dib and Lisan al-Gaib. Like there's just such a, and I feel like they make put such an emphasis of trying to set that up and have you a natural transition that like they all just kind of blend until you're at both. Like there's an extreme where it's Paul, and then there's an extreme where it's Lisan al-Gaib, and I don't know that the middle portion of that quite connects. No, this is funny. I haven't even said this to you yet, but like whenever it was me and my wife and one of my friends went and saw this, and when we got out, I was like, they kind of made the same mistake with Paul that George Lucas made with Anakin in Revenge of the Sith. Like his fall, or like his turn, was so fast that it was like, it kind of gives you a little bit of whiplash. Like, but after the turn, like it works fine. Sure. It's just like, whoa, that was kind of quick. Okay. Yeah, I mean, my side there was not related to what you were saying. It was, one, it's 10 o'clock, and then two, it's for me, it's difficult to compare Timothée Chalamet and Hayden Christensen and those two characters, because like there's definitely similarities, 100%. I just think one is significantly better than the other. I see the parallel though. Right. Even though like the whole like I'm about to kill some younglings of it all. I feel like that's such a more severe turn, like turn than him just decide, like, because like I think for me, my problem with the Muad'Dib part is that they announce his name Muad'Dib, and then all of a sudden the Fremen are like, yo, I like this Muad'Dib guy, I'm gonna follow him. And so much so that there's a pretty like pivotal scene to like with Rabba, where like he's in the Wadacopter? I forget what that thing's called.
Oh, ornithopter.
Yeah, that thing. I can't even say that word. But when she like blink it and you'll miss it, like he or she is falling out of the copter. We're gonna call it that, and they're saying full Muad'Dib, And like,
Yeah.
I don't know that part of the story for me really is sold super well. Now, I say that as a viewer of the movie that loves it. Like, I can look past it, but with a critical eye, trying to be unbiased, and it's difficult. Like, I don't know the Mahdi part is sold incredibly. Because basically what happens is this. We're introduced to Paul Atreides like 5 minutes after part 1. Okay.
Yeah.
In part 1, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember a significant moment and during that time where they're like, "Yo, is this the Lisan Al Gaib? Is this that guy?"
I mean, there's like like whenever Stilgar comes in, the first time you meet him, and then he's like, "I've seen you before," and stuff. Whenever he's talking to Paul, like there's like little references, but nothing like it's still just like very quick.
Yeah, I was about to say, I feel like if you're making that like transition from 5 minutes before where they're like, "I don't believe you, you're going to have to kill Janice," to as written, I don't know that part of the story really connected. And by all means, like the entirety of Paul Atreides' character works for me. And I say that with complete certainty. Like, the transition between, and I think I've talked about this before, like, I think Paul as a character, I don't know if during that time between part 1 and part 2, I don't know if he is as much considering them friends or allies as much as he is considering that relationship, thy enemy of my enemy is my friend type like situation. Because he knows that if they're after the Harkonnen and I'm after the Harkonnen, I want to be on their side because it's less work I have to do. Now, I say that, and then he meets Zendaya, and that's a completely different thing. His whole connection to that specific thing, I don't know that I completely buy. I also don't know that I think Paul Atreides personally is thinking in terms of, I'm going to help these people fight because it's the right thing to do, as much as I'm going to help these people fight because I want to avenge my father. What's your take on that?
Yeah. You mean like him using, like, manipulating the prophecy for his own benefit, like for revenge?
I think so, yeah. Like, well, not even necessarily specifically the prophecy, but like definitely the relationship.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an element of that character. I think it's like, I'll just say this: he's a very tragic character.
Sure.
And we're kind of just getting started there, but like, it's so interesting in this movie, especially just like him being so in denial of it, even though he's the one helping forward these things and set them in motion. It's kind of like watching a car crash that you know is coming.
Yeah.
But it's just like like he sees it coming and like he's telling the audience, and you're just like, okay, well, stop it. And he's just not doing anything to stop it.
That's funny.
So yeah, it's just like he's so in denial, but then you got to think like, and you're not hearing his inner monologue, but it's like, what is his real motivation here? You know? And I still think we don't know that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, I think I'm very much inferring just based on, I don't know if we talked about this. I think you're relying very heavily on the actors here to act.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I think Timothée Chalamet, to me, sells that, again, like, he's very much personally self-interested.
Yeah.
Now, that's not saying he is very much also mulling over, am I Lisan Al Gaib for them? Am I fulfilling a prophecy? Should I be doing that? Because I think he is. But also, I think he's also selfish. I think he's also maybe like in it for himself. I also think that maybe he's only looking to partner with them for what they can offer him in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is pretty darn compelling. I like that. I think ultimately that Frank Herbert and Denny pulled together like a very, very, very interesting, intriguing, compelling character out of Apollo Atreides, and ultimately Timothy Chalamet just brought that to life and really knocked it out of the park for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like, I kind of struggle with the turn and how quick it is, but I think that Timothy does sell it very well. Once we, like, I'm sure you'll probably refer to a certain scene where, like, everybody's talking about it. The big, just like, he comes in and takes command. Like, wow.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to talk about it now? I'm down to talk about it now, or we can talk about some other things and then get to that. Whichever one you want to do. I'm down for it.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we can talk about that pretty quick. It's just like, I think, though it does happen quickly, like, that scene is so powerful and so well done that, like, it's like the way Denny sets it up with like the different factions within the Fremen, and then bringing in Gurney, and like Gurney's perspective on this is just like, we can, like, he's heard how strong this force is, like these Fremen, like we can use them to our advantage. And he's like kind of that devil on Paul's shoulder, basically, like, which he's not that in the book, but I love the way they did that character in this movie as that. And then of course Chaney, who's just like, she's the one watching the car crash that we as the audience know is happening. No one else knows but her, and it's just, it's so tragic to watch.
I have another take on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
We will be getting into, so I mean, we're talking about this moment anyway. So essentially, before he has this council scene where he goes in there and Timothy Chalamet just goes full on ham, like, before that, it's prophesied that he has to take the water of life, and he dies. So way earlier in the film, before that, Shawnee and Paul have this really intimate scene where they're sitting on a dune, and it's one of my favorite sequences in the movie, because this is one of the moments where I'm like, Denny's in his bag, Timothy Chalamet's in his bag, Zendaya has realized she has a bag and she's in it as well. Like, there's a moment where he asks her, he's like, you know, my secret name apparently is some mouse thing. What's your secret name? And she says, oh, it's nothing. It's from some stupid prophecy. It's Desert Spring.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a throwaway moment. It's definitely foreshadowing. You know that. But, you know, I didn't make this connection until the third time I watched the dang movie. But I was like, is part of her skepticism rooted in thinking maybe she's a part of the problem?
Mm-hmm.
And so it makes you think the entire time about the relationship, like, she knows she's not supposed to be with this dude, but she wants to be with this dude. Like,
yeah.
That changed everything about Zendaya's character for me. She knocks Shawnee out of the one thing that legitimately aggravates me as a viewer of this movie. I feel like I'm pretty critical of movies, and I feel like I don't give passes often. Is hearing all of the and this is not directed towards you. I think you have valid criticisms, but hearing all of the book readers complain about the way they treated Shawnee's character, I just cannot get behind, because in terms of like development, like, again, completely removed from what the book is, it's an adaptation. Shawnee's character in this movie is one of the most developed characters in the movie. And I think it worked, especially after I noticed that on the third viewing.
Yeah, no, you might be onto something there, Matt. That's about all I'll say on that. But like, yeah, I I don't know. I just had a lot. I've had, when did I see this? Like Thursday. I've had since then to really think about it, see what a lot of other people have said about it, and just really kind of try to come to my own conclusion on this. I think, understandably, the way Denny changes up her character in this movie is what's drawing the most controversy,
which is surprising to me.
Yeah, I mean, well,
because I could think of one other thing.
I get, but like I get being upset about it. I was very upset about the Chaney thing. Not let me.
Let's talk about it.
So, I really like her character in this movie a lot. I really like what they do with her until like the very end of the movie. But your little read on that there also kind of recontextualizes that a bit. And the more I think about it, I'm like, wow, like I think like Denny knows what he's doing. I mean, he's not gonna make changes just because like I want to modernize this, or like I think I know this story better than Frank Herbert does. No, he's a massive fan of this source material. He's going somewhere with this that like
let me just say the fundamentalisms or the fundamentalists. I cannot talk. I apologize, people. The fundamentalists versus the skeptics of this thing, that was not accidental. Like, one, like there's a very compelling thing with Stilgar going on here, but also like the flip side of that, like why is there a skeptic? Like if we're as close knit as they are, and they're very close knit, where did that come from? Yeah, like there's a purpose it's there, and ultimately I think that's probably what it is so to further her character, in my opinion. It took me 3 times to see that till I caught up on it, and I'm like, because like there's a moment when she sees him laying there, like practically dead, and she knows what's going on because of the prophecy, right? Yeah, and she knows what's required of her in that moment. Yeah, 100%. Like she was aware of everything that was going on. There is a comparison to be made. I'm just blinking on what it is, but there's certainly another like story that is borrowed from this before that it's just on the tip of my tongue that I can't remember. But I really love what they did with Shawnee because it is super compelling. Like even like people that I know in real life who battle with things very similar to this, where they see the answer in front of them, but they want to have an answer for themselves. And I find that very compelling. Oh yeah. So the other part of Lisan al-Gaib, the council, dude, first time, I don't know that Timothy Chalamet completely sold it for me. I bought it enough. I was intrigued. I was all in. The second and the third time though, like that's one of my favorite scenes of all time. Like period. Like not just in this movie. I wish that scene was longer. I like it that much. Yeah. I love, gosh, because I've only seen this once. You've seen it 3 times. So I'm trying to remember, and I don't know if you'll be able to remember, like, what is it that I'm trying to remember what exactly Gurney says to her, like whenever she's about to basically charge the stage. Like, oh no! So basically, what that is like he's like you. She basically looks at him and she's like, "You have no like dog in this fight." And he's like, "You see this scar? You know where I got it from?" And he's pretty much essentially saying like, stop, like I have as much of a dog in this fight as you do. If you're going to try to stop him, because I have obviously a motive. One of the most compelling things about this movie and this story is the motives and the power of it all. Like, and ultimately I think that's what this specific scene was about. Is he's like, you and I can fight right here because you're not. Basically, he's like, you're not going on that stage because I have interest in what he's talking about right now. That's basically what I read into that. Okay. I can't remember the exact dialogue, but essentially he's just saying, I have every right to be here. In fact, you see the scar on my face, like he killed my friend, like Rabba killed my friends. Also, put the scar on my face. I have every right to be here, and I have every interest in being here.
All right, and this is like a little bit of where like the book and movie are kind of bleeding together a bit to me. So like, I know this is where this happens in the movie, but there's a part in the book where like there's kind of like whispers like among all the Fremen where they're like, you know, times past, we've gone on all these spice raids and everything. And Paul's kind of like been showing command and everything. I know Stilgar's our leader, but I mean, Paul's like the strongest of us. I feel like he should be the leader. Like, that's kind of what goes down this scene. Like, they say that he needs to be the leader of the Fremen, and then Stilgar's like basically like, yeah, just go ahead. And then Paul's like, no, like that's not.
Yeah. So basically this, I can quote this scene because it's so short, which makes me so mad. Basically my man walks in there like he's the Terminator and he's like 98 pounds and a half. And one guy calls him like, you can't talk in here unless you're the leader, basically.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Timothée Chalamet says something like along the lines of like, I will tell, I forget it's a very iconic line, but basically it's like, I will lead where we go or something like that. I forget what it is. And everyone just gets up really upset and they're really willing, ready to fight. And he's like, none of you can like hurt me. Again, I'm butchering these lines, but that's basically what he says. And then again, everyone's very much up. Like Stilgar gets up then and is like, fight me now. Like, let's just get this over with. We knew this was it was inevitable. And he's like, he basically tells him to shut up. And he says, I'm Paul Atreides, da 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 da. And then he picks out this one guy in the crowd and he starts talking about his grandmother.
Oh yeah.
And that's where the turn kind of happens, because he kind of ends that monologue with, back then this place had a Fremen name, or this planet had a Fremen name. Name drop, Dune. Like, and then everyone's like, lead me to paradise. That's basically what that scene was.
Dude, I'm sorry, but that is so goofy, but I loved it.
Dude, it's like prime time, like cheese in the best way possible.
That's so sci-fi from the 60s. Like,
but no,
and he knows what he's doing.
I hate that scene is so incredibly memorable, but it's also 2 minutes long in a nearly 3-hour movie.
It's true.
And we'll get to that more later. But before that, let's talk about Lady Jessica and Reverend Mother. I personally like Rebecca Fergus. I have not seen her, but like, again, I have watched Dr. Sleep. I think she's phenomenal in that thing. I've seen the meme on Twitter, and it's accurate about the hat. But like, I've never seen her this good. Like I said it the other night, this is borderline Toni Collette, and I fully believe that. The more I think about it, that's the only comp I have. Like, she goes full psychopath in the best way possible. Like, here's the thing. Like, I don't know that it's full well, it's absolutely full psychopath, first of all, but it's not unhinged. It's very calculated and manipulated in the best way possible. It doesn't feel like she's unhinged in the like a very unhinged definition, but she's absolutely unhinged. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, dude. I mean, just like the parts where she's there alone talking to Aaliyah. Like, she looks like an insane person, and I love it. Like, every time that happened, I was like, "This is cinema." Yeah,
what really sells it for me is because the there's question. Like I said this in my past in the Dune Part 1 podcast. The one thing that did not necessarily work for me in that movie, and props to my man's Denis Villeneuve and Rebecca Ferguson for setting this up, it was the unknown motivations there, and not knowing where she lies in terms of like allies and so on and so forth. I love that they made an effort here to make you believe that she loved Paul as a mother, so that when that switch happens, Reverend Mother is there to just manipulate Paul. Like it's not a mother-son relationship anymore. It's, I know this kid trusts me and I'm going to take advantage of it.
Yeah. And okay, so what do you think how do I say this? So where do you think her motivations are coming from? Like, is she the one who's making these decisions?
I mean, I think I said when we talked about this the other night, ultimately this is a game of who's moving the pawn. And I think I said then, I don't know who's moving. Like, there's about 15 different pawns moving at one time. And I don't know who the last one moving the pawn is.
Okay.
Because I think I mentioned that I don't know that I believe the Bene Gesserits are at the height of the totem pole like I think that we're supposed to believe at this moment. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I believe they might be a pawn, and they don't realize that they're a pawn.
Interesting. Yeah.
Oh, and quickly, one other thing. Like, I just want to rephrase what I said about the mother and the Reverend Mother thing. Like, again, like I really love that you really believe Lady Jessica in this movie loves her son and is trying to advise her son, and the juxtaposition of Reverend Mother turning that advising into manipulating, like very noticeable manipulation, that just worked for me. I feel like if she cannot sell the difference between those two things, I think there's a real possibility this movie falls really flat.
It's true.
Do you
so
have,
you mentioned,
I want to ask you a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you know the answer to the question you asked me? Is there an answer that you're aware of? Okay. You don't have to answer it. I was just curious.
I mean, I think it's something you could read from this movie, but I won't lead you anyway.
No, if it's in this movie, please direct me.
Well, this is actually what I was about to ask you.
Okay.
Was like, so you mentioned when we've talked about this before is like the scene where she's about to go south.
Sure.
And she's standing there, and then she's saying that Aaliyah is asking why you're not going with us and all this stuff. And you were kind of interpreting that as maybe Aaliyah wasn't really saying anything and she was just using that as a means to manipulate Paul. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that's the case at all.
Okay.
I think that's definitely Aaliyah. I think perhaps Aaliyah is manipulating Paul.
I find that very interesting.
But yeah, just
dude, I just got an insane like thought process that just when you said that, I'm like, that would be crazy if they're doing this. Imagine if Aaliyah is setting Paul up to fail, so people hate him.
Okay,
so she could be the quote unquote savior.
Mm-hmm.
That would be crazy.
You're getting back into your book, Matt.
I'm writing that thing. I want to spend 30 seconds here. I don't know why you show Anya Taylor-Joy. I just don't.
Yeah.
Especially the juxtaposition of the sand dunes and the water. I think there's just so much symbolism there that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's. Oh man, I love that. Like it's such a quick moment, you know, Not even just her, but just like the vision of the water and the dunes meeting each other is just so wow. Like that's like chilling for me, just because like I know like Paul, I know the future, but just like man, the way did he, like, you even look at just things that he did in part one that you don't even think about in the moment, like the visions, some of the visions Paul was having and stuff like that, and then see them like flipped on their head in this movie, and just so many cool things you don't even realize that Denny's setting up.
I'll keep it $150. I don't know that anyone said the script for part one was bad, but I don't think we bragged on it enough.
Yeah,
that script is phenomenal.
Really good. And I think that's something I read today. I didn't even realize this, that Eric Roth helped write the first one. Eric Roth, I believe I'm right in saying he's worked on like a lot of Scorsese stuff in the past.
That sounds right.
Like big stuff. But the first movie definitely just feels like a nearly 1-for-1 adaptation of the book, which is really interesting whenever you look at this one, and it kind of starts to go off on its own a bit. But Eric Roth was like not involved with this one. But I feel like you kind of need that, like that you needed that for that first movie for it to follow the book.
It's The Force Awakens.
Yeah. And then, but I don't know that, it's weird because I don't know, even more thinking about it, that a 1-for-1 adaptation would work for the events of the second part of the book. And that's like a bit, what do you call it? Sacrilege, maybe, to say.
Say it one more time. I think I want to make sure.
I don't know that a 1-for-1 adaptation of the second half of this book would completely work.
No, I don't think so. Based on everything, based on what you told me, and based on what I know, I don't think it does.
And I feel like that's going to be sacrilege, just because.
I will make another sacrilegious statement as a person who has not read the book and has no connection to it. I think this is the better adaptation.
Okay.
I think it's a more. I say that super lightly. I want to be like kind and respectful to the book. I think this is way. I haven't read the book, but I think based on what I've seen on screen and what I have heard being used incredibly loosely, I think this is more mature and more interesting, and maybe a little bit modern.
And more modernized for sure, but not like. I mean, it's a bit heavy-handed, but kind of in a way that you need.
Yeah, I think so.
For an adaptation of a source material that's this dense, and I feel like you needed that sort of 1-for-1 super dense adaptation for the part one to really establish the world.
Sure.
But I think the direction he took works better cinematically.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that you're bang on the money. It's absolutely the reason The Force Awakens had to be a direct ripoff of A New Hope. It's for a new generation. It's for a new medium. And because of those reasons, I think you had to be as close to the source material as you could to, one, show that you're being like respectful of it and you're taking it seriously. But also just so you don't get in a position where you're doing too much. You have a guide, like you have an outline of what you're going by, and you have to hit this story point, this story point, and this story point to make sure that this story point and this part of the thing works for you. And because of that, I think it was a really good choice to do that.
Yeah.
Speaking of other things, I think it's a really good choice. I think Shawnee and Paul is just fantastic in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And they're really only like this is their movie and everyone else is around them. Let me be clear, but I don't know that their relationship is completely. Like, I feel like you could do a lot. You could have done a lot more with it. But Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya just they put the team on their back and just carried it. I loved what they did. Like the whole like pivotal dialogue of the movie of like, I will love you as long as I breathe. And then also I will love you as long as you stay who you are. It really lends itself to be like both lends itself to a developing relationship, but also like a deterioration of trust. And, and the first half of the movie, you're like, oh my God, these kids are rizzing this thing up. The second half of this movie, you're like, oh my God, this is not going to work.
Yeah.
And I like the choice of having them repeat those lines because it happens a couple times, I think. And it just, I think in a lesser movie, that does not work.
I think so too. I think it's very So it's one of these cases where two people fall in love like super quickly, you know, and usually that could just be like it's not very believable. I think this is a lot like this is gonna be a weird comparison, but it feels like a James Cameron, like a Titanic. Sort of.
I don't think that's weird at all.
Yeah. I almost feel like that he might have kind of drawn from that a bit. Just, I mean,
100%. Like, I'll do respect to James Cameron, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Kate Winslet because they're the GOATs. I don't know that relationship was completely developed in such a way that would have been, again, believable if it was lesser talented people connected to it.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why I made that example too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's like on paper, you're just kind of like, I don't know.
It's very thin.
Kind of a bit paint by numbers, but just when you have those people involved, it just kind of gets a little bit lightning in a bottle there, and it just works really well.
There is a problem here with this relationship. We'll get there in a second because I want to save all the flaws for a little bit later on. But ultimately, I love them. Ultimately, the relationship worked for me. Like they were fantastic in this. All of the Zendaya, the people who were upset about Zendaya not being in the movie but being in a perfume ad, I think they got what they needed in this movie. I want to quickly touch on a couple other things. Did you feel that the death of Paul Atreides, like specifically like the death of the character, was earned for you?
Okay, this is good. No.
Really?
I really don't like how they handled that whole sequence, to be honest. Go crazy. In the book. So this happens, like he does it of his own accord. No one coerces him into doing this. But then whenever he takes a word of life, like he's dead for a while. Like he dies, and the Fremen, or not the Fremen. I don't think the Fremen even know. Like Lady Jessica finds him, and like she keeps it hidden from everybody for like a long time because she's like, if they find out, like they're going to think he's weak and all this stuff. And also that he's dead, and like who knows what kind of chaos that would cause. But then like they basically have to call Chaney like off the battlefield to come and visit Paul, and like
interesting.
Yeah, it's like this whole drawn out thing. I feel like this
was a bit more calculated than that.
Yeah, like you couldn't you couldn't exactly do that from the way this movie's just like the way the way time works in this movie, the sort of like time constraints he puts on the plot of this movie. You couldn't have done that. But I still feel like this is just one of those moments where like he lets a lot of moments breathe like early on in the movie, that when moments like this happen that are very big and very integral to the plot, like whenever they're as rushed as this one is, it's just kind of it's a bit disappointing.
No,
I think I would say.
No, I get that. Like, I think one of the things that's a complaint I would completely understand. And that's as a person who thinks that the death was earned for me. Like the transition, more specifically, but like, I feel like they took the time to have Reverend Mother go south, talk to Homegirl about touching a worm and putting him in water to really set this up for it to only be literally a minute and a half worth of time. Now,
yeah,
I also say that as a person who thinks the Desert Spring Tears worked for me, it did. I just don't know that I love the transition of time here. Like, it feels like it's supposed to feel like, it feels like they're trying to set it up to feel like more something like an hour or 2 hours has passed since he's had the water of life.
Yeah.
But it feels more like literally 5 minutes. And there's definitely an element of that again, we can talk about a little bit more about this in a moment, because I want to talk about it more in a moment. Ultimately, I think though it worked for me. Like, again, it's one of those things I can cast by the wayside, and just I love the movie enough for it just to press on and forget about it. There are some other pivotal moments though here. Specifically, the announcement of the Harkonnen heritage.
Yeah.
I think, and I didn't see this coming at all, by the way. This caught me off guard completely. I think the most surprising thing, even after the reveal, was, so that's how we beat them, by being Harkonnens. Because literally and figuratively, it just made them become more of who they are. I wanted to ask you this. Do you think there's a bit of like the water of life element that is similar to money? It just makes you more of who you are?
Perhaps. Yeah, that's an interesting read on that.
Yeah, it's been on my brain because, like, obviously I don't know the lore, but I think it's pretty dang compelling to have a character, again, that I personally believe that was completely self-interested from the moment he met the Fremen, and just took every opportunity he could just to get vengeance for his father. Knew the consequences of starting a relationship with Shawnee. They very much, I feel like, made a nod to something that was negated from the book in this. They gave them an opportunity to have a kid. I think that's the most like PG way of saying that. And again, like, he knows the repercussions that are to come if we believe that he's actually seeing these visions. If that's the case, and again, we believe that he's not wholly bad, but maybe there's some self-interest there. I do think it's a pretty compelling idea to, again, like, and I even thought about this too, like, are we like, is it factual that, like, as they mentioned earlier on, that water of life is completely fatal to all men? Do we know that? Or is that just part of the, like, some of the prophecy, like, that may or may not be true?
Yeah. I mean, that I don't think it's ever that's definitely like a rule established in the books, is that the men can't partake of that. And that's another thing that's interesting in the book that I'm kind of surprised he didn't do it this way in the movie. Like, he gets knocked out in the book from just one little tiny drop of that water of life. Like, it takes him out. Like, he's out for weeks. I think it's like 3 weeks in the book.
Wow.
But just like, you basically see like Jessica just kind of like sipping it on down, like, yeah, and then like he just takes one draw. He's like,
quick side note here. I didn't completely understand, and this is another reason I had the whole like book idea that I had the other night.
Mm-hmm.
When Reverend Mother is like transitioning her brain into Rebecca Ferguson's brain, and she's like, "Oh my God, what have we done? She has a kid."
Yeah.
What's that about?
Oh, so well. So basically, not only is all of that getting transferred to Jessica, it's going to Aaliyah as well.
Okay, that makes sense.
And they basically call her, all the Bene Gesserit call Aaliyah an abomination. Like, from here on out, you're probably going to hear that in like the next movie. That's probably what they're going to be calling her.
Interesting. Okay. But no, like the whole, that's how we beat them, by being Harkonnens, and then the idea that I had with like, it just makes you more of who you are. I thought that was very interesting and intriguing. I could be way off base, but
really it just gives him better powers of prescience, which is like what they call his ability to see the future and everything. And I mean, as we see, it kind of just basically levels him up to like this ridiculous level Goku. Where now he's just like, basically he's almost like emotionless. Like he's kind of like, he's just so calculating, because you got to think he's seeing so far into the future that the present, like he doesn't care about people's emotions all that much, because he's having to be so calculated and methodical, because he knows what's happening in the future. That just, yeah, it's like,
dude, we talked about this the other night, and I might have had a different opinion. The narrow way, she'll come to understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's big.
Yeah. Actually, now I'm thinking about it, I think you're right. All right. Yeah, it completely, again, like you said, it recontextualizes that, because now I'm thinking, if she was always a fundamentalist and she had problems because can she come to terms with those problems?
Yeah. And see, that's a change from the book. That's what, as I'm not too sure how I feel about that. That's,
I think,
seeing what's going to happen with her is super intriguing.
I can't remember the promotional material, but there's some promotional material where Timothée Chalamet and her Zendaya are standing next to each other, and it's very much and very literally casting them in a dark light.
Mm-hmm.
And so, who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
Anywho, any things you want to talk about before we hop into flaws?
Just quickly, I think I love Giedi Prime.
What's that?
I love Giedi Prime, the Gladiator stuff. I love. Well, I don't know if I love everything Austin Butler's doing, but he's going for it. Just everything with the Harkonnens is really good. Wish there was a bit more, but that's kind of how the book goes. They kind of take a little bit of a diminished role in the second half of the book.
This is a good transition.
But all of that stuff is just, I love it. Like, it's so cool.
No, I agree with you. I think Austin Butler is really great in this. I think his performance might be being overstated a little bit, but I do think that he's really great in this. Everything else, though, I gotta be honest, aside from like the visuals and the lore that they established on what's the planet?
Deity Prime.
Everything else aside from Austin Butler and my girl Lea Seydoux, like I don't know that I buy the Harkonnen stuff in this. I just don't like it as a viewer of the movie. It's a little like, hypothetically, if you were to rewrite Batman Begins and you made Joker a side character in that movie. You see what I'm like? Yeah. That's kind of what this feels like to me. Like they were such a prevalent, present momentum of the previous film, and I think especially with the Harkonnen twist in this movie, I feel like their status and their present, like they don't feel present in this movie. I don't think, especially with the way they treat Rabba. And again, like I can buy that he is not a beta, like Twitter's trying to convince us that he is, to like Fade's alpha. Like I can buy that, but I will also say the writing's not doing like Rabba any favors, I don't think. And again, like I completely understand that if the book does not call them to do that, but if you are adapting other things, you might be at liberty to adapt some things here.
It's true. And
because of that, like Skarsgård was like, the Baron was such a terrifying presence in part one. And dude just became a guy who hung out in a jacuzzi and said some words while smoking a pop and watching his cousin like fight on his birthday. Like I don't know that I believe all of those things. It kind of rips the curtain too far back on like some of the mystique that was there for the Harkonnens, I think.
That's interesting. Okay. I mean, yeah. I also think this is a part that kind of suffers from him, Denny, having to oversimplify things a bit.
Sure.
Because there's like a whole other thing going on between Fade and the Baron in the book, like this sort of struggle for power. Like, as obviously we get like the stuff with the Baron being like, so now I have leverage on the Emperor, where like we can basically blackmail him into us taking over everything, like basically becoming the new emperors and all this stuff. And then Fade has this whole like other side angle where he hates the Baron, and like he's trying to double cross him, but they're both just so hyper intelligent that they're like constantly on to each other. It's like, it's this super interesting like dance between the two of them. And that's kind of like, and then Thufir, the guy who was in the first movie, the Mentat, he's a big part of that because he's taken captive by the Harkonnens, and like they're poisoning him and like giving him the antidote, basically. Like they give him the antidote and stuff in his food so that whenever they're ready to let him go, they'll just like take him off the antidote and he'll die off, because he's like this super powerful being. But anyways, all that to say, like, I think it suffers a bit from him having to kind of strip away some of that complexity, because he can't make like a 7-hour long movie. Yeah. But
let me ask you this. We know that Thufir was in the movie originally, and he was sadly part of like deleted scenes. Are at this point, like, are we expecting that he is dead? Because I thought he was dead until I found out.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's just what they're leaving that at.
Yeah. That's probably like the biggest flaw of this movie. Is that, you know, that there are things out there, and I'm not going to label them unanswered questions because I don't believe that completely, like, it is that severe of an issue. But I do think that because I feel like there might have been pressure to keep this thing under 3 hours.
Probably.
because I don't know why, again, like why some of the actors had to have so much on their back to carry scenes. And they do a great job. Denny directs them incredibly well. And this is not, again, I want to reiterate, I love this movie so much. I officially moved it into my Letterboxd top 4. Like, I really do love this movie. I don't know if I'm being selfish or if I'm being critical. I just think there's minutes of this movie that could be added on that makes the movie better.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we talked about it a little bit, but the last 30 minutes of this movie, pretty much from the moment Homeboy takes some Gatorade and then like goes into the council and then things ensue and then he's fighting Fade and then he's doing the Godfather thing with the Emperor. Like, that's so fast. It's so fast.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I think ultimately it all lands. Like, for me, it did land. But, dude, I would have watched 4 hours of this movie. And I just don't know how. I just don't know what's cut. Like, I just don't. I feel like you had such a great momentum. And I don't even want to say it's pacing issues, because like I don't feel the pacing issues watching the movie. I don't feel like I'm missing anything. I don't feel like the moments aren't earned. I just feel like as a viewer, it would be dang fun to see this one other thing and this one other thing and this one other thing. Do you get that?
No, yeah, that's that. I definitely feel that with this movie.
It's weird because, again, I don't feel like you're missing it as much as just selfishly you want it. And again, I can only imagine Denny feels the same way.
Yeah.
And I don't know the rationale behind that, aside from they were just trying so hard to get it under 3 hours.
Mm-hmm. Probably so. And I mean, like, even that subplot with Thufir, like, that probably would have tacked on at least 3 hours, like, at least bring you up to 3 hours. And then whatever, I guess Tim Blake Nelson was Count Fenring, probably. It's so weird. They haven't even said like who he was playing. But that's just who I'm guessing it is, because that's like the only other major character that wasn't in the movie. I mean, yeah, that's probably another 30-ish minutes there. Like, yeah. And I just wonder what that looked like before, you know, like I wonder, like, were there reshoots? I don't know.
I don't want to put this out there and be incorrect. I do think there's some ADR in this movie.
Yeah.
I think I've noticed some ADR in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, I think there's a moment after he's awoken from the water of life, and around the time he's doing the whole monologue of like, I see a way, there's a narrow way. I think some of that's ADR'd. I think. I could be wrong. It's very possible I'm wrong. And I think there's definitely some scenes in that area where Fade is, Emperor, Stilgar, Gurney, just at the very end. I think some of that's ADR'd too.
Yeah, and see, that's where, I mean, Thufir and Tim Blake Nelson's character would have been in that scene.
Oh, okay.
That's why I'm really intrigued, like, how'd they get around that? Like, how'd they get around them not being in there? Or did they just, like, composite them out of the shots and stuff? Like, what did you do there? That's probably what they had to
Kevin
do.
Spacey was in that one movie, and then he wasn't.
That's true. True. Until he wasn't.
I think the biggest flaw of them all is Alia, right?
I think so. I mean, I've thought about this a lot. I really hate that we missed the moment from the book where she gets to kill the Baron, because that's such a big moment for her character. I get that it's super hard to get a really good child actor that probably could have pulled that off. without it being like super corny. But I mean, if you're adapting Dune, there's like you gotta bring some of the weird to the table, and then he does bring a lot of weird to the table. Like we just finished talking about the Harkonnen stuff. Like there's some super weird stuff in there, but it feels part of me feels like it's weird to see what he is fully open to bringing into his somewhat grounded world. Some of this like crazy stuff from the book, but then like sort of avoiding something as integral as the Aaliyah thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know. I really don't get what he's doing with Aaliyah, just because also Anya Taylor-Joy's age, and I don't know how that's going to work in a sequel. Like, is she going to be that age in the sequel? Because like in Dune Messiah, the book, she's in her teens. Any way you look at it, there's probably going to be a time jump. I have no idea how he's going to handle all that.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I think that maybe I don't think she's going to be a Messiah.
You don't think?
I don't think
Taylor-Joy is.
Yeah. If anything, it's a setup for if they want to do something with Children of Dune. That's what I was kind of hinting at earlier.
Could be.
Just you don't make Twilight. You don't make 2 movies of Twilight and then decide in Eclipse. Is that the 3rd movie? I can't remember. And then recast Robert Pattinson. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, well. But there's also something very substantial that you don't know.
Sure.
That would bring the FBI into the situation if it wasn't someone of Anya Taylor-Joy's age.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
If that doesn't give it away at all.
No, I understand. That is weird. Again, maybe the thing is he bypasses that.
Could be.
I don't know how pertinent that is.
No, because that's the thing I saw him talking about in that interview I mentioned the other day that I was hoping you didn't see.
Oh, I haven't seen it, no.
I'm like,
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's the only way it makes sense to me, because again, you can't recast Chalamet, I don't think it's possible.
Yeah. Like I want them to, but I know you can't.
Yeah. Zaslav would cut off his 2 hands. Like it's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you do with Anya Taylor-Joy. I really do believe it's just hey, you know this person. It's cool that this person is that person. You're never going to see them again until maybe you might if you're interested. Like, it makes me think of like there's an example here and I'm just blanking on what it is, but for the sake of this conversation, let's say that Alden Ehrenreich was a really I got it. Childish Gambino just shows up as dude,
Lando.
what? No, not Lando. Spider-Man.
Prowler.
Yes. He does that in Homecoming first. As like it's a really deep cut, but like he's an uncle, I think.
Yeah, he's Aaron Davis in that.
Yeah, and then
not Aaron, he's the other one, yeah.
And then he's suddenly Prowler. Like in yeah. I think it's might be something like that. Like, let's put it out there and see what happens, and if people are interested, and yeah, I think it's that. That's kind of my interpretation of it.
Could be.
You want to talk expectations here? Or you want to slide and save expectations for when we do this Dune Messiah book off thing that we're going to do?
Yeah, it's hard to get into without talking about things, but I'll just keep saying it. I'm very intrigued to see how he's going to handle this.
So in the future, I'm going to read Dune Messiah. It's not too long, so maybe in a couple weeks, we've had time to set on this.
It's basically just like an epilogue to Dune. It's just like, I think he had it all written, and then the publisher said that this is too long, so he just split it off into a separate book. It's pretty much just like the actual end of Dune.
Gotcha. So we'll be doing an episode on that. We'll be talking through the book. So there would definitely be spoilers for that book. So if you want to read the book, pick it up, and we'll talk about it in a couple weeks. Outside of that, any final words on Dune Part 2?
It's a really good movie. I'm going to kind of hold my judgment for a while. I really like it. I hope to love it one day.
I think you will.
I think I will. But yeah, as it stands right now, I'm one of the skeptics just a little bit.
Sure, I get it. And like,
I might be Cheney where I'm skeptical because I know that that eventually I'm going to come back around to it.
Let me be clear.
Right.
The problem is when people are not open to it. Like I've had multiple people like try to convince me that source material is the goated thing of all time. Like it can't be better. And I fundamentally, I disagree with that. Like I'm okay with Frank Herbert's Dune being better than the movie. I'm okay with that. But the adaptation, I think in itself, I don't know, especially the world that we have established. I don't know that there's a easy transition there. I think what's put to screen really works and works for what, I mean, you kind of made this example earlier, but this is basically Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and I guess maybe The Dark Knight Rises, obviously very tonally, thematically different. But the comparison I'm drawing here is that Batman was not grounded before Batman Begins.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that completely recontextualized how you view things within that. We don't get the Joker, the movie, or Joker, the movie without Batman. And I think there's elements of Joker that don't work in a comic universe, don't work in a different world. And I'm not, there's no implication here that Frank Herbert's Dune is a comic universe or a cartoon or anything like that, because I don't believe that. But the implication here is that the world that Frank Herbert built, unfortunately, by proxy of things being changed and being modernized, is not the same world that Frank Herbert built. Like, it's heavily, obviously inspired by it. It's literally called Dune.
Yeah.
But there's elements of it that just won't transfer.
It's true. I mean, the book is 60 years old, you know? And I think it's, I've read a lot of books. I haven't read a ton of sci-fi. I do think it's the greatest sci-fi book I've ever read.
I believe that. I don't even know the book.
Perfect book. It's a utterly perfect book. I think, interestingly enough, I haven't really said this, but I think these movies have done nothing but give me more respect and more appreciation of the book.
Sure.
Which I think is something that that good adaptations do.
I think people are viewing this as Luke Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
That's my take on it.
Yeah.
It's in a glass case and people don't like being played with. And I get that. Like it's something you love. Makes perfect sense. But Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi was not as mutilated as people make it out to be.
Yeah.
And we can end it there. I love this movie. I will defend this movie until I die. I'm absolutely, I think I've already seen this movie more times in theaters I've seen any other movie ever. I'm going to go see it at least another time. I think I'm probably going to try to see it like 5 times ultimately. I told you the other night, like, I don't want to be the person who comes on here every single year or every single week and be like, yo, this is one of the greatest movies of all time. I really liked it. They knocked it out of the park. I freaking hated The Flash. Dune Part 2 is special if you're just watching it.
Yeah.
You won't get this again in another decade. And if we do, I promise you it's been a heck of a decade.
And it's probably going to be Denny again.
I think so. This movie's special. Like I said this the other night too. Like the easy comps are Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and Game of Thrones. Mm-hmm. The more coded and interesting and actual thoughts and composition or comparisons are, dude, this is The Godfather.
Yeah.
It's Michael Corleone. Like it just is.
Yep.
I'll leave it at that. I love this movie. I updated my letterbox. It's official. Like I'm still battling with do I like Arrival or this one more, but the more I think about it, I think I like this one more. I love it.
Yeah, I'm not there.
I wanna cop Rendezvous and Rama or whatever that Rendezvous and Rama or Rama Rendezvous or whatever that book's called.
Rendezvous with Rama.
Yeah, that thing. And I want to read it because obviously I think he's going to be doing it. But anywho, love this book. I love this movie. Excited to read the book. Excited to be in this world again. Denny freaking killed it.
Yeah. He's the guy, him and Nolan. Man, it's so great. So great that we get this.
I said this in my initial review. It's crazy, and I know I'm probably alone in this opinion. It's crazy we got Christopher Nolan and Denis Villeneuve's best movie in back-to-back years.
Wow, man.
And what's even more crazy is that if the writer's strike and actor strike doesn't happen, we get them in the same year.
Yeah. It's just, it's cool that, you know, it seemed like the theatrical experience and thing was kind of fizzling out there for a while. It was pretty bleak times, but just, I mean, since 2021, I guess, since Dune Part 1, we've gotten like at least one movie every year that's been like, you have to see it in the theater. Like there's been Top Gun, there's been Avatar, there's been Dune Part 2, Oppenheimer. I mean,
last year alone, we got Barbie, we got Oppenheimer, we got The Creator, we got there's something else I'm blinking on, but no, like absolutely, Wonka. No,
but yeah, it's just movies are back, man.
I think so.
In a big way. Big way.
Speaking about movies being back, next week we'll be talking about the Oscars and how Jimmy Kimmel is better than Joe Coy. But we'll see you guys next time. Adios.